Assalamu alaikum students. I hope every one of you is fine. In the previous lecture, I have defined discrete Fourier transform. Today, we are going to discuss properties of discrete Fourier transform. Although you have studied discrete Fourier transform and its properties in signals and systems course, but in this course, we will revise some of the properties that you have already learned, but we have more concepts to learn in this course. Okay, let us start first the properties of discrete Fourier transform. Let's suppose you have a signal x of n and its discrete Fourier transform is x of k. So the first property is linearity. For example, you have a weighted sum of two signals and their weights are a and b, and the two signals are x1 of n and x2 of n, and if you want to find out its discrete Fourier transform, it will be weighted discrete Fourier transform with same weights a and b. It is simple property. And the second one is circular shift. Circular shift property states that if you have a signal x of n and you circularly shift it with an amount n naught, then your discrete Fourier transform will be multiplied by wn raised to power k n naught, and n naught is the same which is given in time domain. So the first thing is, this is not the linear shift that you have studied earlier, which is like this, n minus n naught. Here you are using angle brackets with a letter n. These angle brackets are representing you are circularly shifting your signal x of n by an amount n naught, and this x of n has a length of n. So let us first understand what is circular shift. Let's suppose you have a signal like this. This is x of n, and you want to perform this circular shift. Let's suppose you want to circularly delay your system with an amount 1 unit. Then what will happen is, if you do the linear delay, then this sample will move towards left. This signal will move to 1, 1 moves 2 towards 2, and similarly 4 moves towards 5 and 5 moves towards 6. But here we are performing circular shift. Here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, n is equal to 6. So in circular shift, the main restriction is you have to remain within this range, which is 0 to n minus 1. You cannot go beyond 5 and you cannot go before 0. You have to remain within 0 to 5. So what you will do is, if you want to delay your signal with an amount 1, in linear shift you have to move the signal here, but in circular shift you have to pick this sample and place it here and move all the other samples with 1 unit forward. So what it will become, it will look like this. At 0 you have this larger sample that you have moved, and the remaining samples will be shifted by 1 unit. One, two, three, four, 5. This is your circularly delayed signal x of n minus 1. So let's suppose you want to, instead of delaying your signal, circularly delaying your signal, you want to circularly advance your signal. By an amount of 5 units. So in this case, instead of moving counterclockwise, you have to move clockwise for this time advance operation. So what you will do is, you have to move this sample 5 units towards in this direction. So it will go here 1, then it will move here 2, 3 units, 4 units and 5 units. This sample will be placed here. Now for this sample you have to move it around 5 units again in this direction. So this sample will move here, then from here it will go here towards 5, 4, 3 and 2, and this will be appear here. Similarly, if you keep going, these 6 samples will appear here. Now this sample is left, and if you move towards here, it will go 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units and this 5 units, and it is appearing here. So if you observe, this x of n minus 1 is same as x of n plus 5. Similarly, if you have a signal, same signal, and if you want to find out x of n plus 2, so in this case this unit will move to 2 units towards here, this unit will first move 1 unit here and then here, Now this sample at 2 will move 1 unit, and 2 unit it will appear at 0. Similarly, this will move 2 units from 2 to 1. Similarly, this will move towards 2, and this last one will appear here. This largest sample will move 1 unit and 2 units here. This is x of n plus 2, and it is circularly time advanced. And you can prove it yourself that it is actually equal to x of n minus 4. If you circularly delay this signal by 4 units, it will again appear like this. So both these signals are equivalent. You can do it yourself. I did it for this signal. So I hope you have understood what is circularly shift. So according to DFT property, if you circularly shift your signal, your discrete Fourier transform is multiplied by an exponential w of wn raised to power k n naught. And here this n naught is same, which is given in time domain. This n naught is the amount of delay or advance in your signal. As you have shifted your signal in time domain, you can also introduce a shift in your frequency domain. So if you have a Fourier transform x of k and you shift it by an amount k naught, and you are doing circular shift, then the inverse discrete Fourier transform will be equal to your signal x of n multiplied by wn raised to power minus k naught n. This property is known as circular frequency shifting property. Now another property is circular convolution. It states that if you have a signal x of n and you convolve it with a system response h of n, and here you are doing circular convolution, and its symbol is, I am using this symbol asterisk with a circle around it. This is the symbol of circular convolution. Then the discrete Fourier transform will be equal to y of k, which is the DFT of y of n, and it is equal to the product of x of k and h of k. Okay, let us understand this property with the help of an example, but before that we have to understand what is circular convolution. Let us do an example. Let's suppose we have two signals, x of n is equal to 1, 2, 0, 1. If you recall, I have told you that you can also represent your signal this signal x of n with this notation. You have placed the values of these samples in the set form, and you have another signal or system response h of n, which is given as 2, 2, 1, 1, This is your system response, impulse response h of n, and you can represent it with this notation: 2 2 1 1. Now our task is to circularly convolve these two signals. It is relatively very easy to circularly convolve those two signals. What you have to do is write the values of samples of both signals in this form and start multiplying. First, put a cross here and multiply this one with each sample. What you will get is 1 0 2 1. In the second time, put double crosses and multiply this sample with all samples of x of n. What you will get is 1 0 2 1. For this value you have to place 3 crosses and you have to multiply this 2 with all the samples of x of n. What you will get is 2 0 4 2. And similarly for last value of h of n, 2 0 4 2. Now what you have to do is you have to circularly shift all the rows towards these crosses. You have to fill these crosses. So take this one and shift it here. It will become 1 and all other values remain as such. Similarly, you have to pick this one and you have to shift right from here towards this one. So it will be 1. You have to pick this value and you have to move here, which is 2, and remaining 2 samples will remain as such. They will not be shifted. Similarly, you can fill these crosses by shifting each sample and they will become 0 4 2 2, and here it will become 2 0 4 2. Now you can simply add them. This is 5, this is 6, this is 7, this is 6. This is your output y of n, and you can plot it. Six, 7, 6, 5, and this is 0 1 2 3. This is your answer. This is the circular convolution of x of n and h of n. Now you may ask, if n and h of n are not of equal length, x of n has more samples as compared to h of n, then for circular convolution you have both sequence of equal length. So in order to make both signals of equal length, you will have to insert zeros in a sequence which is shorter in length. Let's suppose you have a signal 1 2 3 4, another signal 7 8 9 10 11 12. This is X, this is H. So in order to perform 6-point circular convolution, you have to insert 2 zeros in X to make both signals equal. When you zero padding in X, you can perform circular convolution to get the answer. You cannot do circular convolution of unequal length signals. You have to make them equal. Now, this circular convolution we did is in time domain. For these two signals, we performed circular convolution and we get this signal y of n. Now, according to this property, if you multiply their respective discrete Fourier transforms, you get y of k, and if you perform the inverse discrete Fourier transform, y of n. So in the previous lecture, we calculated x of k, in previous lecture I represented this x of n by g of n, and its discrete Fourier transform was equal to 4 1 minus j minus 2 1 plus j. And for this h of n, which I represented with h in the previous lecture, this h of k was equal to 6 1 minus j 0 1 plus j. We have done this in previous lecture. So let us apply this property. According to this property, we have to multiply both x of k and h of k. So this y of k will be equal to x of k and h of k. And in matrix notation, what you have is y of 0, y of 1, y of 2 and y of 3. And it is equal to x of 0, h of 0, x of 1, h of 1, x of 2, h of 2, x of 3, h of 3. And it will be equal to 24 minus 2j 0 and 2j. This is your y of k. Now in order to find the circular convolution of x of n and h of n, you have to take inverse discrete Fourier transform of this y of k. So this y will be equal to dn inverse y. Using the matrix which we have done and written in previous lecture, you can find out that this y is equal to 6 7 6 5, and you can observe this y is exactly equal to 6765. This y and this y, they are both same. So I have proved that if you circularly convolve in time domain, you can find the response by just multiplying the discrete Fourier transforms of signal and system response, and then taking the inverse discrete Fourier transform, you will get y of n. Now let us move towards next property, which is known as modulation. According to it, if you have a signal y of n, which is the product of two signals x of n and h of n, and if you take its discrete Fourier transform, it will be equal to 1 over n x of k circularly convolved with h of k. So simple like properties of discrete time Fourier transform. Here again, if you multiply in time domain, you have to circularly convolve in frequency domain. Similarly, if you circularly convolve in time domain, you have to multiply their respective discrete Fourier transforms. Now the next property is circular time reversal. It states that if you have a signal and you do circular reversal in time for this signal, then its discrete Fourier transform will also be circularly reversed. It's a simple property. If you circularly time reverse in time domain, your discrete Fourier transform will also be circularly reversed in frequency domain. But first, let us see what is circular time reversal. Circular time reversal is defined as x of n minus n for all 1 to n minus 1, and it is x of n for all n is equal to 0. So let us do an example. Let's suppose you have a signal, same signal from which we are playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now for this signal, first thing is here your n is equal to 6. The first is you have to find this thing, which is x of 6 minus n. You have to find it, and this is your x of n. So first thing is to find out x of 6 minus n. You have to find x of n plus 6 first, which is 6 units time advance, linear time advance version of this x of n, and it will appear like this. This sample will appear at -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, and it is 0. This is x of n plus 6. Now we have to find x of minus n plus 6. We have to do time reversal, linear time reversal in this signal. So it will become one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is your x of 6 minus n. So you have determined this 6 minus n signal, and according to the definition of circular time reversal, you have to pick all the samples from 1 to 5 from this signal. You have to pick this portion of this signal. So let me draw here. One, two, three, four, 5, and according to the definition of circular time reversal, at 0 you have the original signal of x of n, which is this thing. So it will come here. So this is x of minus n of n. This is circular time reversal of this x of n. Let me repeat, you had a signal x of n and you have to perform circular time reversal. For this purpose, you have to find first x of 6 minus n, because your capital N is 6, and for x of 6 minus n, you do normal operations on signals, which is shifting and then reversal. You get this thing. This signal is x of 6 minus n, and you have to pick its samples from 1 to 5, which I have drawn here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at 0 you have original signal of x of n, which is here. I shifted this signal here at 0. So this is simple. Let me repeat, if you do circular time reversal in time domain, your discrete Fourier transform will also be circularly reversed in frequency. Another property, and it is known as Parseval's theorem, and it states that from 0 to n minus 1, which is basically the energy in time domain, it will be the energy in frequency domain. This is the Parseval's theorem. Okay, now let us discuss symmetry properties of discrete Fourier transform. As you know, if you have a signal x of n and it has discrete Fourier transform x of k, this x of n can be a real signal or it can be a complex signal. For a real x of n, for this real x of n, you will have its discrete Fourier transform equals to x of k, which you can decompose into its real part and imaginary part. As you know, you can decompose this signal x of n into even part and odd part. Here the problem is you have n length sequence and its discrete Fourier transform is also of length n. So all the operations we are doing is we are taking the help of circular operations. We have done circular shift, circular convolution, circular time reversal, because we have to remain within this range 0 to n minus 1. So in this case, if you have to remain within this 0 to n minus 1, if you have to remain within this 0 to n minus 1, what you have to do is you have to define a new kind of decomposition which is known as x of periodic even and periodic odd. They are also known as circularly even and circularly odd signals. Let us define circularly even and circularly odd signals. Periodic even signal is defined as 1 by 2 x of n plus x of circularly reversed version of x of n this is periodic even or circular even part of your x of n. Similarly, periodic odd signal can be defined as 1 by 2 x of n minus x of circularly time reversed version of x of n. This is periodic even and periodic odd, and if you sum them you will get x of n. So if your x of n is real, then the discrete Fourier transform of this periodic even signal or periodic even part of your x of n will be equal to real part of x of k. Similarly, if you take discrete Fourier transform of periodic odd part of your x of n, its discrete Fourier transform will be equal to j times imaginary part of x of k. You can observe that if you sum them up you will get x of n. Similarly, if you sum them up, real part of x of k and j imaginary part of x of k, you will have x of k. So from these properties we can say the discrete Fourier transform of real x of n is circularly conjugate symmetric. That means its real part is circularly even. The discrete Fourier transform for a real signal discrete Fourier transform, its real part is circularly even, whereas imaginary part of discrete Fourier transform is circularly odd. This is the definition of circularly even signal, and this is circularly odd signal. This is the definition. So if you have a signal x of n which is real, then its discrete Fourier transform is circularly conjugate symmetric, whereas the real part of x of k is circularly even and imaginary part of discrete Fourier transform is circularly odd. Similarly, magnitude response of your discrete Fourier transform is also circularly even. This is circularly even, and the phase response of x of k will be circularly odd. Let me repeat. If you have x of n and if it is real signal, then its discrete Fourier transform is conjugate symmetric. Real part of x of k is circularly even. Imaginary part of discrete Fourier transform x of k is circularly odd. Similarly, the magnitude response is circularly even and phase response is circularly odd. Now let's suppose your x of n is now complex signal. In this case, you can decompose your x of n into real part of x of n plus imaginary part of x of n, and if you take its discrete Fourier transform, you will get x of k, and you can also decompose it into real part of x of k and imaginary part of x of k. So before going further, let me define a new kind of decomposition for complex signals. If you have a complex signal x of n, you can decompose it into periodic conjugate symmetric part and conjugate antisymmetric part. Periodic conjugate antisymmetric part. So this periodic conjugate symmetric, or it is also known as circularly conjugate symmetric part of x of n, and this periodic conjugate antisymmetric x of n is also known as circularly conjugate antisymmetric part of x of n. So this XPCS, periodic conjugate symmetric part of x of n, can be defined as 1/2 x of n plus x conjugate of minus n Here you are taking conjugate of circularly time reversed version of x of n. Similarly, you can define circularly conjugate antisymmetric part of x of n as 1/2 x of n minus x conjugate of circularly time reversed version of x of n. So what we have done is we have decomposed our x of n into circularly conjugate symmetric part and circularly conjugate antisymmetric part. Similarly, we have decomposed our signal into its real and imaginary parts. From these two decompositions, we can define symmetry properties of discrete Fourier transform for a complex signal x of n. So if you have real part of x of n, then its discrete Fourier transform will be equal to periodic conjugate symmetric part of x of k. Similarly, if you take imaginary part of x of n, its discrete Fourier transform will be circularly conjugate antisymmetric part of x of k. As you can see, this is the decomposition of x of k, and this is the decomposition of your signal x of n, and this is DFT between x of n and x of k. So this is the relationship between the real and imaginary parts and conjugate symmetric and conjugate antisymmetric part of x of k. These are circularly conjugate symmetric and circularly conjugate antisymmetric parts. Similarly, so if you have periodic conjugate symmetric part of x of n, you can also decompose your x of n into periodic conjugate symmetric and periodic conjugate antisymmetric parts. So if you have a periodic conjugate symmetric part of x of n, its discrete Fourier transform will be the real part of x of k, and the discrete Fourier transform of periodic conjugate antisymmetric part of x of n will be the imaginary part of x of k. So again, you can see if you sum them up, you will have x of k, and if you sum these two signals, you will have x of n. And again, you are getting DFT between x of n and x of k. Okay, this is end of today's lecture. In today's lecture, we have discussed different properties of discrete Fourier transform. We have seen the symmetry properties of discrete Fourier transforms. In the previous lecture, I defined discrete Fourier transform, and in the next lecture, I will discuss how can we implement the circular convolution and linear convolution using DFTs, and some new concepts we will study. If you have any question, please feel free to ask me. You can send me an email. Thank you very much.